Neurooscillation are the brain's electrical activities that follow specific pattern. For example, alpha waves frequencies, beta waves frequencies, etc. On the other hand, when we say aperiodic cycle or aperiodic brain activities, those are the electrical activities that don't necessarily follow a specific rhythm or pattern, like, let's say, alpha activity. And if you were to draw a layman's example for it, is you can say what aperiodic pattern is to neurooscillation or brain waves is what gusts is to wind. So if you think about gusts that are not periodic, but wind is a continuous, let's say, periodic movement of the air, that is how you can draw some type of a conclusion. And these are the two type of electrical activities within the brain that have been ignored more or less for decades and decades when it comes to understanding how the brain works. So let's talk about it. Aperiodic activity within the brain refers to the neural signals that do not follow a regular rhythm or cycle. Unlike brainwaves frequency activities such as alpha, beta, etc., which are following a repeating pattern of electrical activities within the brain. Instead of showing clear peaks at specific frequencies, aperiodic activity looks more like a continuous hiss or a background noise in the brain signals, a little bit like gusts in the wind. For decades and decades, scientists believe that these are just buzzes that we hear and we can detect from the brain activities, and we really didn't pay attention as to what they could potentially mean, and we disregarded them. However, more and more recently, scientists are becoming more and more interested and curious about these buzzes within the brain, because we're beginning to see that these gusts within the winds, so to speak, these aperiodic patterns actually might mean something, and they might mean different ways in which the brain is trying to transfer information and communicate within itself. Scientists have come to believe that these aperiodic neural activities within the brain, this hiss, this background noise within the brain, is important because it reflects some fundamental brain processes such as overall neural activity levels as to how much energy the brain cells are using, excitation or inhibition balance, in other words, how the brain regulates activity to prevent overstimulation or underactivity, and lastly, the cognitive effort. In other words, the aperiodic activity tends to increase when tasks get harder, making it a potential marker for mental effort. So unlike the traditional brain waves such as alpha, beta, gamma, etc., which come and go at specific frequencies, aperiodic activity is more like a steady underlying signal, electrical signal, that adjusts based on how hard the brain is working. In this particular paper, which I believe is not peer-reviewed yet, the frontoparietal multi-demand network, which is a key system in the brain that helps us stay focused, appears to switch between tasks to solve problems. Scientists usually study this network using fMRI, for example, which show which part of the brain are active. But these scans don't really tell us much about the actual electrical signals that the brain cells use in order to communicate. So the authors of this paper suggest that there are two ways to link brain activities to cognitive effort. Theta waves in this case, which is a very, very low brainwaves frequency, they appear when people are concentrating and focusing on something, but they don't always work as a universal signal for mental effort. They vary too much between tasks and may be influenced by other signals. These scientists also in this paper focus on the aperiodic activity, this hiss, this buzz and background noise, which is a type of a background brain signal, which is a newer and possibly a better way to measure the mental efforts of the brain. It's like a steady humming that appears that the brain is activating, and which increases when the brain is working harder, when it needs to focus more. It's more consistent across different tasks and seems to be directly related to how much effort the brain is putting in. This paper proposes that aperiodic activity helps power up brain regions, different brain regions that handle difficult tasks, while theta waves, which are much lower in brainwaves frequency, help different brain regions communicate and coordinate within each other and within each other. Together, these two processes might explain how the brain handles mental effort across different situations. These researchers highlight two key neural markers. To go a little bit more in depth in these two neural markers, is that mid-frontal theta power that was previously identified as a marker of cognitive demand. Its effectiveness is limited due to its localized spatial distribution, variability across tasks, and confounding effect from aperiodic activity. Secondly, aperiodic broadband power, which is emerging as a stronger candidate for indexing task demand, as it shows better decoding performance and generalization across tasks and alignment spatially with multi-demand network regions. It may reflect fundamental neural properties like spiking rates and excitation versus inhibition balances. In other words, this paper proposes a framework where aperiodic broadband power supports activation within the MD network that we already talked about, the multi-demand network, potentially reflecting population-level neural activities. Meanwhile, low-frequency oscillations such as theta appear to coordinate activities across subregions of the brain, facilitating large-scale cognitive control. In summary, the study suggests that aperiodic activity may serve as a core neural mechanism underlying domain general cognitive control, while oscillatory activity helps synchronize the MD network regions. What's very important to note and remember from this study and other studies that we cover here is the fact that if we were alive, let's say 50 years ago, and we would come across this paper, people would literally laugh at us. Or if we attempted to do research, this type of research, mainly because the focus of neuroscience was so much on the neurons and the physical aspect of the brain and the chemical aspects of the brain. The neural oscillation parts, the brain electrical activities, was mainly disregarded, especially when it came to conducting research to understand brain activities or brain as a whole, mainly because it was more focused on the healthcare level, for example, in detecting onset of epilepsy attacks, for example, right? But the knowledge that might exist within the electrical activities of the brain as a means to help us understand and research the brain as a whole was pretty much disregarded. And the beauty of the modern neuroscience is that we are getting more and more recognition in terms of not only researchers having the means to conduct this type of research, but also them being braver to actually come out and talk about these research and even publish them. And so it is an very exciting time that we live in, because obviously we are evolving as human species, but we also appear to open up a little bit to other ways in which we could add body of knowledge, add research to our discipline of neuroscience, whose main job is to do research to understand the brain. And obviously there is still a lot that we need to learn, but the fact that the electrical activities of the brain are being even considered as part of research in terms of them getting recognition about different frequencies of the brain orchestrating the inhibition and exhibition of neurons and the onset of maybe neurotransmitters and so forth is very exciting. So unless you've been in this discipline for a long period of time, it's really hard to appreciate these moments where these type of studies come out. And for those of us who've been in this space for a long period of time, we just find it very, very fascinating. In particular, this study where it talks about aperiodic signals, which are even less studied than the neural oscillation signals, because for the longest time we've said that these are just buzzes. Let's just ignore all the buzzes. While in the past, the aperiodic activities of the brain, the electrical aperiodic activities of the brain, were seen more as just a hiss noise or a gust within the wind or just some buzzes here and there. We are now becoming more serious about studying them as well, because it appears that these extra noises, they are not just background noises. It appears that these electrical activities are as part of the brain's communication vehicle, both within it and maybe even externally. And so that's why it's a very exciting time to be alive, because these are the electrical activities that are becoming more and more alive for us, especially because we're also improving our methodologies, our techniques. With evolving technologies, we're able to measure these noises that we called in the past of electrical activities of the brain and realize that there's actually much more to it. And so it is very exciting. I'll add the link of this paper below. And yeah, that's all I had for today. Thanks for watching.